we've had Gray here on the channel before, several months ago now. It seems like it's been so long ago. Had a great conversation with her. When by the time you see this video, we'll go ahead and leave a link where you can go and check out that conversation. It was for our first session of Nerd Therapy. But today we are talking about WandaVision. And Gray, what is your level of Marvel fandom when it comes to the MCU altogether?
Marvel Cinematic Universe, and now the X-Men comics. But really, I'm more of a normie when it comes to WandaVision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what have you thought of the series so far?
I struggled through the first 3 episodes, to be honest. Okay. I'm a binge watcher, so I like to watch everything and not be left dangling all the time. And those first 3 episodes just made no sense to me, and so I struggled with them. But after 4, 5, and 6, I am all in. I love it.
Nice, yeah. And as I say, I think a lot of people kind of felt the same that way, and that was kind of going to be my next question. Depending on how you answered that question, is what were your thoughts on episodes 1, 2, and 3 overall? Depending on where your level is there, because for me, I'm full on sweaty. I was hyped to see those. I love those first 3 episodes. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched them over and over, and also kind of for study reasons as well. Going back, as earlier, just here before the show, I was going through and kind of timing up when certain things happened with one show going on here. I had my iPad, and then I was on my TV, and I'm sitting there going, okay, what's going on here? What's the timing here? Because there's a lot of things that go on here that have to do with timing, and it's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I also know, like I said, from your point of view, and certainly I've had my friend Chillmonger here on the channel as well, where he's kind of felt the same way. Like the first 3 episodes, not for him. The slow, just kind of slow pace. They're short episodes, so what's the point of this? And I think the one good thing about it was, at least really all that we got out of that was the first 3 episodes, and they were some of the shorter episodes. So if you think about it, it kind of went kind of fast. I mean, they say they're 30 minutes, but they got 9 minutes of credits. So
6.5 minutes, yeah, which really aggravates me.
yeah, absolutely. So so then, what have you thought of the episodes since then? The first 3, obviously kind of slow. What did you think about 4, 5, and then 6 so far?
Oh, I love them. And this is a spoiler discussion, right?
Yeah, total spoilers.
Yeah. No, I love them. I have a lot of I have some thoughts about the show. I don't know quite how you wanted to lay it out. Did you want to ask questions and me answer them? I love the way it is. I think that they're using Hayward as a misdirection. I don't think he's going to be a big baddie in this. I think they were trying to set him up, but I think it's just hey, look at this guy. He might be bad, but I don't think he's going to be.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he's your typical government stooge. He
wants to weaponize things and keep secrets.
Yeah, and I think he's still kind of got his own agenda too. I mean, he's a crooked figurehead. I mean, that's how a lot of people are when they get in those kind of positions, and you can see the kind of things that he's done here in these first. I mean, these first 3 episodes that we've essentially seen him in since he's come into the picture. Because it wasn't until episode 4 where we first seen him, and it's funny too because I kind of feel like you're right. It seems like he's at a lot of turns. It seems like he does have an agenda. Maybe he is a villain, and he very well could be, but not quite in the maybe a villainous way
in
the way everyone's thinking.
Corporate way.
Yeah, and that's kind of it, because if you see what he did, when they sent in the drone, it's the same. It's a parallel to what happened in New York in 2012. They had those drones, and they decided to go ahead and sent in the nuke. and the Avengers like, dude, like, what are you doing? And even Nick Fury's like, what? Like, and he, that's Nick Fury was pretty pissed off about that, and obviously, Iron Man took the nuke out into space and everything, and it was really that kind of it really kind of paralleled that, I thought, when it came down to it. And he even when he came out and Wanda came out of the bubble with that drone, he kind of said the same thing that the World Security Council told Nick Fury, like, oh, it was a threat. It doesn't matter if we're sacrificing the people that are in the blast radius, the people of New York. We don't care. We want to eliminate that threat. And it was the same kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah, I kind of think the same thing. Like, maybe he's just a government stooge there, and maybe he is the misdirect to all of this. Maybe he is
Right.
that misdirect.
I do think Wanda is going to be the main villain, but there's my personal belief in watching this is there's two Wandas. There's a split personality. There's Scarlet Witch, and then there's Wanda Maximoff. And when Vision was like, Wanda, what you're doing is wrong. He's kneeling at the couch and saying, Wanda, what you're doing is wrong. This is wrong. And she was like, what do you think? I'm in charge of all the Westview residents, walking their dog, mowing their lawn, making sure they get to their dentist appointments. And she seemed just utterly frazzled. And I think that's why she's frazzled, because she is having to do all that, making sure they eat, making sure they sleep. And then, the further away from her, when she starts to have her attention focused on her kids and stuff, she can't control the people. They're silent. They're stationary. They can't move.
Right.
So how long? I mean, they're reliant on her 100%. They can't move. That one lady's just sitting there putting that ghost up, and tears coming out her eyes. But what if Wanda just spaces that for a couple of days? Those people could dehydrate and die.
Right.
So she is a villain through and through. That is kidnapping, that is controlling people, that is an evasive thing. She is a full-on master villain in this show. And if somebody else is introduced into it as well, but that doesn't downplay what she is doing is horrific and horrendous.
Right. And and that's kind of something that we could kind of go into and explore too, because we could easily get into kind of that discussion where she is obviously hurting. She's going through depression. She's going through this loss, all this pain and everything. And a lot of these, and her powers are growing. And that's kind of really what it is. And she's just like, she's an emotional mess. And so in that sense, I think we could easily say she is the villain. And also at the same time, you could look at it like, well, she is going through all this pain and everything and make that excuse. But a lot of times that's what people do for victimizers too anyway, right? They've been through past trauma and they still abuse people, or they've been abused. So, things like that.
And let's also let's not fail to think that we just brought Quicksilver from the X-Men universe into the MCU. There is now a mutant in the MCU. So wouldn't that make Wanda an Omega level mutant like Phoenix? So their powers grow later. They get stronger and stronger and stronger. So when she's like, I don't know how this happened, I believe she was in a dark despair in her brain and she broke.
Mm-hmm.
And the other half of her created this without the other one knowing. But then once the other one starts to realize what's going on, she becomes compliant because she does get what she wants.
Right.
Vision is a wonderful, wonderful character. He is good through and through. He always does what is right. When he's pulling through that, he can feel he's dying. How would he not know he's dying? Pieces of him are pulling off as he's going through that field. And he doesn't say, help me. Right. He says, the people here need help.
Mm-hmm.
And then he dies. He lays down, curls up, and dies.
Right.
So Wanda obviously sees what, and loves him. And so,
Yeah. I thought that was a pretty interesting scene too. In that what you're just bringing up there, because he was like, it was kind of funny because like when he got up to the to the boundary there, it wasn't hard for him to walk up to it and kind of start to walk through. Is when he started to get through the other side, it seemed like it was
pulling
like got
back.
harder the more he got. And I thought it was interesting the fact that even once he kind of got outside of it, like it started sucking him in while he was already on the outside. I thought it was very interesting that it's sucking him in. Like nobody else, it sucked Monica in when she went up and touched it and kind of played with it, and it sucked her in. Like this was like he was away and it's like it's trying to draw him in. I thought that was
Because
pretty interesting as
it's
well.
his cage.
Yeah.
That is Vision's cage. If it's
And
going to keep anybody in, it would be him.
right.
Nobody, I mean, it's his gilded cage.
I think it's interesting too, like you said, when he just kind of finally gave up, that his body did just fall and lay there, and it didn't seem like it was really getting sucked in quite the same way once he kind of gave in, and just curled up there. Uh, yeah, and it's very interesting also just knowing that how we've seen him look, the like the dead Vision, uh, and then when he comes outside the bubble, he actually looked like Vision, like
But
we know
he
him with the
did
Mind Stone
start
and
to
everything.
pale out. He did start to pale out and pull apart to start to look. What by the time he curled up, he had lost the
Right.
color and the pieces, so it
Mm-hmm.
looked like just his corpse was in a pile.
Yeah, and that I was kind of noticing that too, and I was wondering like, I mean, is that the lighting or is that really kind of what I was saying too? Is it that it was all kind of like basically the life force was kind of I guess being sucked out of him essentially.
And then we got to talk about Pedro. You know, so Pedro gets Wanda to admit that she's controlling everybody by telling her exactly what she wants to hear.
Right,
Everything he does is exactly what she needs to hear to feel better about what she is doing.
right,
So, would the real Pedro be like, oh, I think mom and dad would be proud of you for kidnapping an entire town and forcibly, no, they would not
right,
do that. Nobody would say that. So that's not Pedro. I mean, that is, I feel, whatever other figure is in this show is him.
mm-hmm.
I think Agnes, I I think she was in that town. She's that witch. I
Mm-hmm.
believe she's a character, but maybe she already lived there and Wanda took over it, and that's why she has some more of a. But she is stuck there. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think she's like a main person who is manipulating Wanda either. I really just think it's Wanda. And if it is anybody else, which I don't know much about, but Nightmare or Mephisto or something might be. If it's anybody, it would be Pedro.
Right. And the interesting thing too is like bringing that up too is getting back to Agnes. You know, a lot of people, and rightfully so, think that it's like Agatha Harkness from the comic books, and then suspecting that she's a villain. And really, in the comic book, she was always an ally to Wanda. And also, I notice every time we see her here in the show, even Vision kind of pointed out she's always there helping. She's always there
Mhm.
facilitating. And I think the thing is kind of in the comics is what she did in the comics was I think she's helping train Wanda to use her powers. When she first shows up and she's talking about how to treat your man right or whatever it was that article they were going through and everything, and then later when the bosses come over and she don't have the food, and so who she calls? She calls Agnes. Hey, Agnes, she comes in. She goes, "Oh, of course, I've always got a gourmet meal for four laying around," and she leaves her to it and says, she has the recipes, gives her everything to do it, and she goes, "Oh, this can be done in a snap," and which just all the allusions to other stuff there, like Thanos's snap, and just also the fact that it's she's going to use magic. But then she goes ahead and she leaves her to it after kind of giving her the rundown of the meal and everything, and she tells her to go on her way. And you see Wanda start to balance doing all of these different things, and you can see she's having trouble just making a meal there in the kitchen. And then some of the other things I was talking about too, with like I think the chicken was a very good example of something that they talked about in the Doctor Strange movie with
The
like
times.
yeah, with temporal manipulations and things like that, and how you can cause basically rifts in time, and you can really mess things up when you're doing that. And I thought that chicken was very representative of that, especially considering the kind of powers she used, because she used these kind of motion, kind of stuff like Doctor Strange does as well. Where when he was doing the time and the thing, he was really only doing this, but she's using magic, not necessarily the time stone like he was using, but she's essentially doing the same thing to an object. So I thought that was very interesting. But she's sitting there trying to balance all that, and it seems like constantly Agnes is there to try to help her facilitate, like I said, and keep her and train her magic, I guess.
And
And
maybe she was meeting Agnes when it all happened. Maybe that's why she was in that town. Maybe that's where Agnes resided. And Wanda knew to go there for some reason. Maybe Agnes called her telepathically or something, and then she went there. And maybe when she was teaching her about her powers, Wanda made that hex.
yeah, it very very well could be. And because like one of my theories has been that maybe there was maybe it actually was Sword, like we've seen in the show, where they were sitting there experimenting on Vision and all that stuff, and maybe they actually had, maybe Wanda is actually there, and maybe they were talking to her or whatnot, and maybe she was saying like maybe Agnes is actually one of these agents that's there, and maybe they actually have her unconscious, and then things started to happen, and that's when it all started to change. Like maybe Wanda was originally going along with something, maybe being looked at or whatnot, and going along with something, because like in the comic books they did something similar with Vision and Scarlet Witch as well. Anyway, where Vision was actually going in to see Project Pegasus and work with them. Like, hey, I'll happily go undergo these tests and everything. After he was kind of taken over by Ultron and tried to take over the world. So a lot of parallels here to what we've had in the MCU. And he willingly did that, and eventually Wanda's like, no, screw this. We're like, this is taking too long. You got 1 minute to get done with him, or we're leaving. And so they went along, and then they ended up going along, and Wanda basically told him, you know what, we're out of here. And I'm wondering if something like that was going on. Maybe she was willingly at a facility, sitting there talking to somebody. Maybe Agnes could have been a therapist or something.
Maybe.
But maybe she was actually somebody who was a witch, who was there working and had powers and things as well too. In that sense, and maybe that's kind of how she got there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's just so many different things that I think about when it comes to this, and especially with a lot of the kind of witchcraft stuff that we've got out of this series so far.
So I wanted to say what I thought the commercials. So we've been running down with the commercials, and I think all of them, like the Hydra soap looked like the blue Tesseract. The Legos was, when she brought down that building, but it also looked like the red Infinity Stone, the Reality Stone. Well, I think that the commercial with the boy that was starving because he couldn't eat the yogurt, so he got the yogurt given to him by magic, and he just sat there and he just could not get it open. And this is the episode where Vision is wandering around the town, and he sees that the people on the outskirts of the town are not moving, or not moving very much at all. And then when it cuts to that commercial, you see that boy who obviously he couldn't open that yogurt. So I think it was supposed to be like the people controlled by Wanda seeing what they need right in front of them, but they don't have the ability to do it. So unless Wanda remembers to feed them, they could be holding a yogurt and not able to open the top of it, and they would still die of starvation. So at first I couldn't understand that commercial, and I was just like, that doesn't seem like the other commercials. It just doesn't fit in. It doesn't have the same people and this and that. But then when I realized that tied to it, I thought that made the commercial much more interesting for the show.
Absolutely. And I mean, just thinking about that, yeah, I mean that is very interesting because that's kind of what you see there. I mean, and they're basically you have there what you need, you just can't do nothing about it, you
Right.
know. And I mean, there's, and we could really dissect and look at that a whole lot if you wanted to, because there's, I mean, I think that's kind of something where, I mean, there's a lot of things philosophically you could look into that too. Like where people in their everyday lives that think thinking about the stresses of life and everything. When a lot of times what you have that makes you happy is right in front of you, while you're out there seeking and doing all these things to try to make your life seem better. On social media you're doing this, or maybe you're working hard and doing all this and that. That's really stressing you out when like just take some time out and spend some time with
Right.
your family and your loved ones. So, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, any other things you got like that? Any other
Yes.
theories?
Yes.
Because that's a pretty good one.
Okay, I got another one. This one I was like the happiest with. So, now we know that when Monica Rambeau got sucked into the hex, and then when she got shot back out, her clothes were infused with her Kevlar. It was 87% Kevlar. And then also you notice that her blood work was very different. So somehow when you go through the hex, you're kind of infused and changed from what you are. So I don't know if she's already infused with the Kevlar, like if her skin is already Kevlar, because they said that they need to do blood work, the x-rays weren't working. And so I don't know if that part hit yet. Maybe you have to go through the hex, say 3 times for it to meld your body. I don't know about that part yet. But when she said, she goes, okay, so all I would have to enter the hex safely is a 10,000 pound fallout shelter comprised of lead for photons, cadmium for neutrons, and tantalum for a seismic blast. That right there kind of explains photons' powers. So, and she said, hey, I'm going to meet my engineer now. They left to meet the engineer to get this 10,000 pound fallout shelter to enter the hex in. If she's in that and she enters the hex, that would be the 3rd time going in. We already know it rewrites your DNA. That's how she's going to turn into photon, with seismic blasts and neutrons and photons. Anyway, that was my guess with that.
You heard it here first, folks. Hey, I have not heard anybody else bring something like that up. You heard it. You heard it right here on 2nd Street. First time ever. Don't act like you've heard that somewhere else. And if you have, let us know down in the comments below. But that's pretty interesting.
And I cannot see the live chat. If you guys need Trinity to say something, you got to tell him. I can't see the chat. So hello, everybody.
But yeah, so yeah, that's a very interesting observation with that, because I honestly I hadn't thought of something like that, especially because like you said, we're all kind of paying attention to all these misdirects, maybe. Everything else, we're all paying attention to Tyler Hayward because he's just some corporate goon. And you know what? We know those exist. I know there's been people out there. I was talking with some people in conversations just in like some of the live chats and stuff where people are like, they're saying like, well, I don't feel like we've had time enough with Sword for them to have, been infiltrated and everything like S.H.I.E.L.D. was and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of the trope though. Like, just S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated, and he's like, yeah, but we got time with them before they were infiltrated and all that stuff. I'm like, no, you didn't. They were infiltrated from the start.
Oh yeah,
like that's what Dr. Zola said.
Ago.
Like you just had some time before you were actually aware of it, but they were there the whole time. And that's kind of the thing. And like that's kind of the trope. So like I almost want to see that and want that. Like I'll almost be disappointed if I had an agency that was like that. There was no level of corruption in what they're doing, and just I guess as Vision would say, oversight.
Yeah, and I liked how we got a time frame when they said I wish I would have jotted it down exactly, but they said that Wanda broke into that facility 9 days ago. So stole Vision's body. So this only could have been going on for 9 days. And then somewhere they said that it's only a couple weeks after the snap in general, after an endgame. So there's not a lot of time. It's not like, I mean, she's only been doing this for days.
Right. Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
And she's already, things are already falling apart. She's not maintaining well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of the, like, some of the interesting stuff that's going on there with all that is kind of the timing of everything, and how that all is really kind of playing into it. And I think that's kind of like a lot of the stuff with the show, because we even see even the timing of the shows and everything, and the time frames that they're giving us, because sometimes they give us very specific days, and sometimes they're giving us times. Like when Monica Rambeau first got sucked into the thing, they say 24 hours later, and that's when they had the full on base there set up and everything ready to go. And that's one of the things I was doing when earlier today, was I was sitting there watching. Okay, when I'm watching this, when she gets sucked in here, when that happens, when you hear the helicopter first go in, the drone that she sends in, and when you see it in episode 2 where she hears it. So I had it playing at the same time to kind of see when it matched up in the show. And going through some of that stuff is kind of, it's interesting, and it makes me wonder, because they also do time jumps in the show as well. But the thing is, like, some of it was still kind of lining up with the time of the show. Like,
well, I thought the time jumps could have been very large, but when they gave that 9-day mark, that the time jumps, no matter what, are fairly short. It allowed you to orientate yourself in the show, which I appreciated.
Right, which brings up the question, because then we see Darcy sitting there watching all the shows, and how many shows has she watched? How many episodes have we not seen? Because there's plenty of little snippets and little scenes we've seen here and there, but
they're all what we've
seen.
We
haven't.
But they were all the snippets that we saw in the background are from the shows that were actually a show. There wasn't an extra show. You didn't see, like, maybe they had an extra show when we didn't see it. I really think a show is like a day or two, and that's all that we have seen.
Well, I think there was the couple I can think of that we haven't actually seen in a show. There was the first time when Darcy actually seen Monica in the scene, and it was where she was just like sitting on a bench, kind of like, it looked like near the street.
Yep.
I think there's that scene, and then one other scene.
Okay, so there probably is a couple more shows.
Yeah, and there's one other scene where she's pregnant with the babies, and she sees Agnes at that store, and she's we see him kind of talking there, and then they walk apart, which it seems like that's the same time when Monica is sitting there on that bench too. I think, because I think I seen that was in the background.
They were in the background. They were in the background of that. So yes, that was.
So it's kind of that same time. So it just very interesting how all this stuff works, and that's how the show's got me, where I'm sitting there going and watching videos side to side to try to figure some of this stuff out. And
I really like the way Vision talks, when he was like, "Wanda, today I unearthed Norm's subconscious and I spoke to him free from your influence," and she just like looked at him, and she just looked at him. He's like, "You cannot control me like you control them." And she's like, "Can't I?" There's another admittance. She is doing it, and she's very aware. And then her brother was like, "Well, Mom and Dad would be very proud of you for the ethical considerations of this scenario. Couples staying together, they have better jobs, and they're close to their original personalities." And nobody would have said that to her. That was what she needed to hear to make herself feel better, because Vision was just telling her how wrong she was.
Right. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden her brother was there to say that she was not wrong.
Right. And as I said, that's all those kinds of things make it interesting too, considering, like, I think there is somebody else there. They're manipulating her. They're trying to take control. And I think it comes down to a thing of maybe, because even in the comic books, it came down to this one thing during one of these storylines, is that at one point these guys were trying to get a hold of Vision so they could take advantage of him and use everything that he was. But then they got a hold of Wanda and they seen everything that she can do, and they're like, oh, well, hey, we don't even need this dude anymore. He's like unimportant to us. But then we know that, then they obviously still know that he is important to her.
Hmm.
So, they kind of want to keep those things together. And
If
it's
they have control of Vision, they can control the Omega level mutant.
right. And the interesting thing too is like when we seen in that episode was, I think it was episode 5. What is it, episode 5, where Wanda actually went, where they showed that footage where she went into the sword facility and took him.
That
And
was wasn't that 4?
it might have been
And
episode
then
4.
5 was when she threw the drone back at them. When she carried it back through and threw the drone
Yeah.
back out at
Yeah.
them.
And it might have actually been the same
I could
episode.
be wrong. It might have been the same
Might have actually
episode.
been the same episode.
Yeah.
The thing is, I find it interesting because when we see her go into that facility, the footage that they showed us, the footage that they showed us, it's interesting because you go through where she's going into that facility, when she breaks into that place where they're sitting there working on Vision, they all the people working on him, they don't act panicked. They just run to the walls of the room, just the outside walls, and they just stand there with their tools that they're just like and then you see armed agents walk in from both sides of the room. They all got their guns on her, and they don't seem like they're very threatened. And that's pretty much where it cuts out, and that's all we see. We don't know what actually happened there. And
Right, because that's what she's been doing. She cuts out things so you don't see what's going on.
right. Well, and it makes me wonder if, like, what if they actually took control of her there? Like, hey, she broke in here. Maybe they actually subdued her there, and they got her, and maybe they took Vision to an off-site facility from where they were at that point, to somewhere else, to this little town. Um, especially, I wonder about this because considering Westview is a town that nobody seems to know of, but I think it does still have something to do with these witches also because
Well, I think if Hayward was aware of the town and he was trying to keep it a secret, to keep what they were doing there a secret, he would not have sent Monica. That's what everybody's been saying, that everybody who breaks it down, they're like, well, Hayward might be in on it. If he was in on it, he would not have sent Monica Rambeau to investigate it. He knows who she is. He knows how dedicated and smart and how she can figure things out. So I think he
right.
was totally unaware until Monica brought that to him. I really do. I don't think he had any knowledge, or if he was trying to keep it a secret, he wouldn't have sent her. And if he did know, he would have told her why he's sending her, and not just this is a missing person case.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, it's just like I said, it's so hard to know because there's just so much here that they give us and that they haven't told us. And that's the interesting thing is we've had these 6 episodes. We've got 3 episodes left, and it seems like there's so much story here for them to still give us. Certainly I don't feel like any of these next 3 episodes can be 30 minutes long with credits.
I mean, they need at least 40, I would say 40, but then 46 and a half with the credits. We did, one thing we didn't touch base on at all, though, was Wiccan and Speed.
Yes.
I don't have any theories on, because I know in the comics they were part of Mephisto's soul, and then he wanted them back. I wouldn't know that. I was just happy to see them, and now they matched up with their costumes, and they were like chips off the Maximoffs. I really enjoyed their characters and the way they moved and the way they discovered their powers, and the whole Malcolm in the Middle vibe. I thought that was so fun.
Yeah, and I thought the interesting thing about that is like, and I didn't even think about this when we were talking about it on Friday, when I was talking with Chillmonger, but the interesting thing about that is the Malcolm in the Middle thing. Everybody was saying that this is going to be the 90s episode. This is the 90s time era, but really it's the 2000s.
Yeah. Okay. So it was. I was like, I don't think I watched Malcolm in the Middle in the 90s. I'm pretty sure, but I think it was like 98, 99, 2000. I think it was the very end.
Well, yeah, as I'm saying, that's the thing is like somebody else was bringing that up too. Like Malcolm
Those
in the
two
Middle actually
movies.
came out in like 2000. It was like the 2000 season,
Oh, okay.
but it would have been filmed in '99. However, the one thing I was thinking is like when they're walking, and you see the theater behind them, they're
Those
playing.
two movies are like a 4-year release date apart.
Well, one of them's yeah, I was gonna say the one's the Parent Trap, and the other one is The Incredibles,
Hmm.
and The
I'm pretty
Incredibles
sure
is a
that was a
2004.
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so this has to be 2000s time era they're shooting for in this scene then, and but I thought that was kind of interesting. So like it's like we skipped the 90s because I don't think the last one was the 90s
No,
episode.
because that was the paint by the little paintbrush and stuff.
Yeah,
So I think and if you think back at it, maybe they've been combining like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. If you think back, maybe they are doing that.
well
But we'd
I'm
have to actually look at each episode again to see if
well
that's the
I'm
case.
kind of wondering if what they're going to do is, since we've seen what happened at the end of this last episode with more people getting sucked in and the hex growing bigger, if maybe the next episode we're going back to the 90s. Um, it's just kind of something I started thinking about. Like maybe we're going back to the 90s here, or maybe they'll go back and they'll do a couple of episodes, and maybe we'll jump times in that one in the next episode. Maybe we jump times twice, decades. Really hard to say at this point because, like I said, they're putting so much out there.
I I think the next three are not going to be really Wanda's shows, like how it has the opening credits and the end credits. I think now Vision knows, everybody knows, and now it's going to be them solving this conundrum.
Right.
Maybe there might be some show stuff in it a little bit, but I don't think so. Maybe them combining the 90s with 2000s was finishing off the shows
Yeah,
to
it could
round up
be.
the show.
It could be. I think there was some other interesting things too, like even with this episode too, like with the kids too. I was bringing this up before, and sometimes I feel like I look a little too much into things, but
Me too.
there's other things that people have mentioned as well. But one of those things being that I was noticing in the intro, they named the kids Billy Maximoff and Tommy Maximoff, right? Which
Mhm.
is interesting because the ones that we know as Speed and Wiccan are Billy Kaplan and Tommy. I can't remember his last name.
Are they? They're
Yeah,
not Maximoffs?
no. From the actual comic version of those
Yeah,
of those
yeah. I
particular
don't
Speed and
know.
Wiccan, and the interesting thing is because I believe, and I could totally be wrong here, that in the comic books the Tommy and Billy Maximoff were actually the ones that were kind of the demon spawn. Like we even got reference to in this episode
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from Mephisto, which ended up
Okay.
not being her real kids,
Right,
which
right.
I think is something very interesting because there's been a lot of theories based around that Wanda will end up making this makeshift family, and it's all going to be taken from her.
See, and I don't think so because Darcy specifically said Wu, what's his name, Wu? Officer
Yeah.
Wu. He was like, "Oh, who was cast as the infants, the Niners, and these guys, 9-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh no, they're real." They
Huh.
specifically said they were real. And
Yeah.
so what I think they're taking from different storylines and melding it and then their own storylines. So I actually don't think they're not going to be real or taken away from her. I think they're basically to start the Young Avengers.
And I think that's the thing is I think that maybe she could actually create them and they could actually be real. And by the time everything's broken, they would exist in that multiverse anyway. Because
Well,
I
maybe.
think with a lot of the speculations and everything that's going on is that people are actually going to try to use her to create um, beings, I guess, if you will, like trying to like recreate Vision, trying to create like these
Yes.
kids, and basically trying to bring life. Because even like they said about the dog, like, oh, you can fix him, you can bring him back to life. Um, I think that's kind of what's going on here with a lot of that is I think they're trying to use Wanda to bring things to life because they're finding that she can actually make things real.
But it's only real in that hex, so she can only make things and be able to be alive in that hexagon area that she creates. If you notice, nothing can leave it that she's made. Like, she didn't make Monica Rambeau, and she
Right,
rewrote her clothes, so that's why she
right.
was able to be spit out. She made part of Vision, so the dead part of Vision was able to come out, and then the part that she made sucked back in and then left that like shell. So
And the thing we do know is that she can change things as well. So I think
right.
it really just, I mean, it would almost seem like if there was like some sort of physical matter that they put in there, in some sort of sense, which could essentially mean that all they need is a how would you say, a vessel, just like kind of like Vision's body was. It was just going to be the vessel for Ultron ultimately. That's really all they would need. And if we think about it, there's all kinds of scenarios we could think out about like that with that, considering they've been working on synthezoids and robots and all of that kinds of stuff anyway. So what would it take for them to do something like that? But also, I think it's possible that she can create stuff. Um,
Yeah. Well, she made the
so
kids.
yeah, so
We don't
yeah,
know if they
it's
can leave the hex yet. They haven't
right,
tried.
right, and maybe that could be where the kids get taken from her, and the fact that she can, like, you've basically got one choice, like you're either gonna have to grow and expand your powers, but that can still really only go so far anyway. In so fact that once you take over the world, what are you gonna do? Um, but I guess that's kind of where we're at too, where we're talking about she got the power, kind of like we're saying, like the almost like the Phoenix Force,
Mm-hmm.
the same kind of destructive powers and things like that as well. So yeah, and it's just so interesting, just thinking about all these different things going on in the show.
Yeah, Fridays are like really hard to wait for right now.
I know,
I
and it's
I
it's not going
wake
to get
up
any
in the
easier.
middle of the night. I wake up in the middle of the night and watch the show like half asleep. I'm just like, and then I go fall back asleep, and
That's
then watch
funny.
it again
Do,
then
do,
in the
do,
next morning.
do you make the watch parties?
No, I don't make those because that
Oh.
would actually take me being coherent enough to link up to things and to type. This is like seriously Misty half asleep taking her melatonin, like barely like trying to watch the show, rocking back and forth because she's half asleep.
Yeah, one day I actually woke up. It was probably like 10 after 12. I was in the middle of sleep, and I happened to wake up. I think I took a drink of water, and I looked at the time. I was like, "Hey, I could turn it on." And I was like, "No, I'm getting my sleep." I just went back to sleep, and I'm getting my sleep.
I'm
Um,
an insomniac who wakes up many times at night anyway, and I have to take sleeping medicine and like to fall back to sleep. So I'll wake up and if it's something that like sparks my interest, I'm like, oh nope, can't go back to sleep yet. I'm too I like became interested enough to wake myself up.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, me like I've got to I need my beauty sleep. I need my beauty sleep.
I'm one of those rare 5 hour nighters that just functions like that.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that, but like sometimes I do so much. I'm like, no, I need to get my rest. I need to get my rest because I don't want it to catch up to me. But yeah. So any other kind of things that you've noticed in this series that maybe nobody else has noticed?
Um, I did I mention I believe that Agnes is under Wanda. Yeah, Agnes is under Wanda's spell too, the witch. That was all my notes that I had. And that I did not think Hayward was in control of this. I think his motives are nefarious in other weapon building ways.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, I think so too. Um, Now, do you think there's going to come a point in these next few episodes where we're going to learn some things that are going to make bring some rewatchability to those first 3 episodes?
No.
You don't think there's going to be anything else to add to
Not
those?
not to bring to those episodes, no. I think the last 3 episodes are going to be amazing, and I believe there'll be a big cameo and probably Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to want to rewatch every episode, and maybe you'll want to rewatch those because it'll just make more sense. I don't think it's going to make you learn more from those episodes, but it might make them make more sense. Unless that means the same thing.
Yeah, and there's something interesting, something else interesting I wanted to bring up as well is I noticed we're always looking at all these things constantly throughout the series, even in the end of all the outros of every show. You notice when it cuts to the standby, and it runs through those sequences of like that really close up of a TV, the pixels and everything. It usually shows like some of the slides from the episode, and it always goes into to Vision's eye at the very end, and then it goes into that little montage of everything where we see the glasses, we see the butterflies, the house, the town square, the water tower. What do you think there's really any the rings, the wedding bands? Do you think how much significance do you think there is to all of these symbols that we see there in those end credits?
Are they always the same? Is the ending always the same, or do they change with the episodes?
It's pretty much at the point where once they go into Vision's eye at the end of every episode, it becomes the same.
I don't know if that's going to have any meaning. Maybe in the last episode, maybe instead of going into Vision's eye and it being the same, maybe it totally changes into something different.
All right, and I know in I think there was one of the episodes. God, did they do that through the whole outro of it? I think it was episode 4, where they played the Voodoo Child song from Jimi Hendrix. I think that was at the end of episode 4, and I think that actually played.
When she had the babies. Episode 4 was when she had the babies.
Yeah, I think it was. It may have been that episode. It might have been episode 5, where they had that out.
5 is when they got the dog.
I think it was 4 then. Yeah, it was 4. But they had that outro, and it was that Voodoo. I think that was the name of the song, was like Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix. And I thought that was very interesting because thinking of like the character of Brother Voodoo, I think it's Daniel Drum. I think it's Daniel. In the comic books, who is Voodoo, and thinking about some of the stuff that's going on here, where a lot of people speculating, and we've seen a lot of evidence leading to that, like with witchcraft and everything. East View, West View, some of those kinds of things.
June 2nd.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing that's one of the things is a lot of people think that that has to do, like, Agnes was there at the Salem witch trials and all these kinds of things had something to do with that, and which is very interesting because if she is at the Salem witch trials, she's not just there hanging out. She's a witch. She's being burned.
Well, and she obviously she's a witch because when Vision unearthed her conscience like he did Norm's, she started cackling like a mad cackle. Yeah. So I thoroughly believe she's going to be Agatha Harkness. I don't know in what way and what mannerisms and how they're going to tie her to her, even if she's going to be that big of a character. But I do believe she is that character.
Do you think maybe she's dead?
Maybe, with the way she was grasping at herself, I thought maybe like maybe everyone in that town is dead. If Agnes is dead, I would believe everyone's dead.
Right.
But they might not be. I never saw any glimpses of them going gray. Like, Wanda never lost her composure with anybody else, and so I don't know about that.
Right. And that's because that's been some stuff that a lot of have been some theories out there as well, is that a lot of people these people are dead. And I am almost kind of wondering too with that with the same thing as well, where if all these people are dead, because we kind of seen, even like we seen Herb was sitting there like we're all, you know, she's like no no like no, and I think there's some reason why they wouldn't want to tell Vision that, because maybe they know he's dead too. But the interesting thing is, because even in the comic books, in that Vision and Scarlet Witch series, there was a certain point where they were trying. Agatha Harkness was dead. She was killed by her grandkids, and she was trying to break through from the spirit realm. And this happened on All Hallows Eve. Um, she was trying to break through because the barrier between basically the spirit world, where
On
where she
Hallows
was
Eve is
dead,
thinner.
the veil is thinner, and
Hmm.
she ended up trying to contact Wanda, but she was under attack, and she was being held captive, so she couldn't get through to her. So that's when she called out to Vision, and she's like, "Hey, Vision, like, hey, like, Wanda's in trouble. She needs your help." And that's kind of when all this stuff kind of came about, and um, essentially some of these same things kind of happen, where a lot of these evil spirits are trying to get resurrected on All Hallows Eve, because in one of the other series, Sam Hain was trying to do the same thing,
Hmm.
which there's been allusions to in here as well, even with the Grim Reaper and everything. And it
I
really does kind of make me wonder if if most of these people, not all of them, are actually dead.
I don't think all of them, because then Marvel would have to deal with dead kids on the show. Like those kids would, some would be dead, and I just don't think that's something that they would bring into comic books, but I don't think into WandaVision on Disney Plus.
Right. Yeah. And then it kind of makes you wonder too, like even with how we've seen all the kids and everything. Well, and that was just it too, was with the kids, because I don't think all those kids that were there were real in the first place. Because I think that was something even kind of Pietro kind of brought up as well.
He said he thought she just kept them locked away in the houses and only brought them out for special like cameos and special things. So uh I the kids were probably all the kids of all these families, but she just didn't want to control them. So maybe, or I don't know.
Yeah,
She obviously she brought the kids forward because Vision was like, "Why are there no kids?" And so she's like, "Oh man, he's figuring things out."
right, and I think that's kind of where maybe she manifested more people in the town. She's like, okay, like crap, like he's asking too many questions. Maybe if I just put more people in kids, if that's what he just wants to see kids, I can put kids out there for him to see. Um, it's interesting too, because like I was noticing in the background on one of the episodes too, where when the dog had died, when they were there in front of what Agnes would probably say was her house, because it was her bush supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
um I thought it was interesting because there was people around. We seen the mailman there and everything. There's people around, and then all of a sudden, when that scene started to happen there with the kids and the dog and everything, there was nobody else around. Even when Vision came up, and I thought it was funny because in the background on one of the scenes, you can see there was a neighbor that was mowing his lawn. All of a sudden, the neighbor is gone, but the lawnmower is still sitting there, kind of in the middle of the lawn, and it made me wonder how many of these people might be real, if there are dead people, if there are just, if it's maybe it's just kind of a mixture, maybe there are actually real people in there. That's why we're seeing some of the IDs and everything. um just so many questions, even like because one of the things I keep thinking is like that it is Shield. Maybe they actually have her in a facility. Things started to get out of their control, and that's maybe why they have, well, because one of my big theories has been this thing called Pleasant Hill, from the comic books, where Shield had made a prison that changed people's realities, and they did it with this girl named Kobik, who basically had the power the of the Infinity Stones, because they had all these pieces that they were experimenting with, and they all merged together and they exploded. And I was thinking like maybe they had something similar, because even in this reality they had people who were there. They had paid actors to be there, and they made up fake names for him, fake IDs, and all kinds of things for him. And it made me wonder if there's something like that going on here, and that's how they got some of these people's identities. And maybe like that resident, Abilash, maybe he actually is an agent. He's like, holy crap, like I've been stuck in here forever, and like I need to call my family. Like I'm only supposed to be here for work. I'm only here for a couple of weeks, and then he gets a break and things like that, because that's kind of how things worked in that storyline. And it made me wonder if something like that is going on here. Just, I don't know. There's just so many moving
Yeah, I
pieces.
don't know. I'm excited for Friday.
I know, and that's the thing is like, you said you like the binging episodes. How do you like the week by week format of this?
I don't. It's my least favorite thing about Disney Plus. It's my favorite thing about Netflix.
Right. See, and me,
and I liked it until I got spoiled with Netflix. So let's not like say this. Like I have been spoiled. If I want to watch it, I watch the whole thing if I want, and I rarely watch week to week shows. So I think like WandaVision and stuff, and then maybe This Is Us and the CW. Yeah, well, but that's the Disney Plus ones, and then and then the CW superhero ones were weekly.
Yeah. And see, for me, I love it because like I don't like, for one, I don't like binging shows and all that stuff. But also, I really I like the week by week format because like every week I have something to talk about. Throughout the whole week I could sit there and think about, oh, what's going on here, and I start just having all these questions about all the different things.
I'm new to that. I'm new to having all you guys to talk to about that stuff. I'm used to I go to the movie theater by myself. I watch shows by myself. I always do all my nerd stuff by myself because none of my family members or any of my friends who I'm physically around are at all nerdy. Like it's just me. I stand alone. And and so now that I get invited to talk to people on shows, and then people actually ask my opinion and stuff. So I must say the weekly format will probably grow on me more now that I actually have fellow nerds to discuss my theories and stuff with. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, another thing I forgot to mention while we were getting deep into theories and everything was, do you think? Because I noticed there's been this like I said, we see all these different things throughout the series. Like I see a bunch of giraffes. We see, like I was saying, we see the butterfly thing. We see all these different things, kind of these symbols out there throughout the series. And the one thing that I noticed, and it's kind of been in the commercials too, is strawberries.
Yeah, there was a few strawberries.
There's strawberries a lot in this series. Now, one of the things I thought was interesting when it came to this was that if you go back to the first episode, there was when the hearts were over, when the boss started choking. I could be wrong here, but I swear Vision reaches in and grabs a whole. It was a strawberry. It was one.
Oh, was it?
I swear it was the whole strawberry that the boss was
I'd have to
choking
go
on.
back and check that out because she did just say, "What are we all supposed to do? Split a strawberry 4 ways?"
Yeah, well, and when they set the dessert out, it had the little strawberry on there and everything too, and I swear it was a strawberry that was on there, and also in I think it was episode 3 in the commercial on these cornflakes that they had. There's a strawberry on there.
Oh, okay.
There's been a few. I can't remember. I can't remember all of them. Even the yogurt in this last episode, there was strawberries.
Maybe it has to do with the red color of Wanda's magic and her costume and stuff, and a red strawberry being red. Maybe.
It could.
Or then you might think they might use tomatoes too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got another theory. I kind of thought of too. Going back to this Pleasant Hill thing that I have, and well, what it was in this Pleasant Hill series is what happened was they had that prison where it changed people's realities, kind of like what we see going on here, where you got people essentially in a prison. And they're kind of being controlled, and they're playing these parts. It's like Smallville, and that's kind of what this Pleasant Hill storyline was like. Well, one of the things that happened in this series was we seen there are different characters that we aren't even in the MCU that are kind of going through some of these things. But one of the interesting things was there is a scene where one of the characters that got stuck there in this prison that was a good guy, because there was a there ended up being basically a prison break. Baron Zemo was in there. All the bad guys, they ended up getting out, and they trapped all the good guys in there, the Avengers. Well, one of the X-Men, it was Rogue in the comic books. She was there, and she was in this fake reality, and she's like, man, this is really weird. Like, all these really weird things are going on. And she's just kind of talking to herself, and she starts to notice these things, and she gets this phone call. This person that keeps calling on the phone. She's like, I'm not answering the phone. And they start talking to her, and it's the kind of these call signs that Professor Xavier had kind of trained all of the X-Men to be able to know when they're being psychologically attacked against psi attacks. And so they would plant these certain seeds in their mind, these things to remind them, to jog their memory. And they would eventually, once they started to know, they would start seeing things, things to jog their memory, which to me kind of reminds me of the commercials here in the series. And then another interesting thing was that kind of separate from that was there was a scene where we seen Cable was actually talking to one of the other, I think it was Synapse, was kind of training her on how to be a lie detector and know when people are telling the truth and when people are lying. And he was doing this. He was talking to her. He's like, okay, okay. So what we're gonna do is, he says, tell her something that's a lie. He's talking to one of the other. Tell her something that's a lie. And so she told a lie. He's like, what do you feel? What are your sensations? She's like, it's like, it's kind of weird, but I smell strawberries. And he's like, okay, what that is like, you could like, when you started tuning yourself to it, like, you can, when somebody's lying to you, you will smell strawberries, and it could be different for everybody. And then when he's like, okay, when somebody's telling the truth, they ran one for the truth, and she smelled seaweed. But I thought it was very interesting in that sense too, because I've constantly seen the strawberries throughout this series, some of the other things, and the times when it's involved too, but then also the commercials that seem to be kind of jogging her memory as well. And we see that just all those kinds of things trying to kind of wake her up, and it makes me wonder if there's even more there with that. But I
There
don't know.
probably is.
Yeah, I like I said, I could go crazy with this kinds of stuff all day, because I kind of feel like there's so much going on in this show, but I also think like there's only 3 episodes left. How much more can they really give us? Which they can still give us a lot, but how much more are they going to give us?
They pack in a lot of stuff in each episode, because like the one where she gives birth to the kids and then they're already grown up. I mean, and then the dog is in the same episode that the dog dies at the, and there's just so much in every episode. And they're going, they probably won't explain everything, and it'll probably be one of the things that we're going to be wondering. It'll probably be a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. Like, I'm wondering too. Like, man, there's 3 episodes left. Like, how much are they going to get resolved? I almost feel like they're going to just kind of leave. Like, they're going to give us so much, but they're also just going to kind of leave it on a huge cliffhanger.
I think so too. I think so too.
And one of the things I was even talking with I think with Chillmonger on Friday about too was like, are they going to do the 2nd season? Are they going to do one? Like, if they did, I don't know that they would do something necessarily quite the same as this. I think it would be very different. But it almost kind of has that feeling like there's not going to be a real resolution, and we might get another one.
I mean, now that I think about it, I don't quite know how you're going to run it into more than 1 season.
Right. And it almost...
I never even thought, like, that never even crossed my mind.
Yeah, and part of the only other reason I kind of wonder that too is because they call it WandaVision Season 1.
Yeah.
And they could just be doing that just to make us speculate and everything even more. But
it could just be the 1 season of WandaVision as a spinoff to specifically create Wiccan and Speed for the Young Avengers, and that is what it ultimately was for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So what moving into like Falcon and Winter Soldier, is this something is it a show that you're looking forward to?
Oh, so forward to. I love Captain America so much, and I love Bucky Barnes. I went to an Ace Comic-Con and I got my picture with Captain America, and I asked him, I was like, "Can you say this is America's ass?" And he looked at me and he like lifted up his brim of his hat in Captain America's voice. He goes, "This is America's ass." And then he wrote Avengers Assemble for me. So I'm a big fan of the whole Captain America, because for one thing, and then Bucky Barnes was so funny at the Comic-Con. He would like poke his head through other people's little windows, you know, and he'd like make little faces at all the fans and stuff. And so when the actors are really personable and just good to their fans, you know, it makes me more interested in what their works are.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think that's something good too. I mean, definitely when you see them in those kind of situations and they are being good and personable and stuff like that. And I can imagine too. I mean, you got to think for them. I mean, you got to make it as fun as you can, you know, because I mean, you get there and the fans are there. I mean, it's just like, you know, when you walked in to the theater to watch Avengers Endgame, you know, you could feel the electricity in the air. It's kind of the same thing, you know, like going to a live concert. You know, you can feel it. You can feel it. So yeah, that's definitely cool because yeah, I really do like Captain America. Definitely, I'm Team Cap, obviously. I'm definitely not a fan of Tony Stark, but and
I like Tony Stark, but when I was going to throw out one more thing. When Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when they were in Civil War, and Spider-Man stuck his arm to the ground and they were both stuck to the ground, he's like, "I hate you."
yeah.
They have such chemistry together. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's great too. I was gonna say because Bucky is one of my favorite characters in the MCU as well. And then Sam Wilson, I've really enjoyed him. Now I know a lot of people are not looking forward to, because there's this big misconception out there, because we don't really know for sure, that everybody seems to think that Falcon is going to end up becoming the next Captain America. What do you think about that? And does that
Would that
excite
be
you?
bad? Would that be negative? I don't see why it wouldn't be a good thing. Cap's old. He's not Captain America anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't see why that would be anything but good.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I was gonna say I know a lot of people aren't looking forward to it, but like my thing is because that's something that happened in the comics. Captain America ended up handing off the shield to Sam, and it was kind of a big deal in the comics. It was like a whole political thing, and it was like this big deal, and it's very interesting, and a lot of people are hoping that's not what happens here in this series, because it was that
Why?
came in the comics at a time when just a lot of people were upset and didn't want to see that in the comics, because there was no regular Captain America comics. It's a whole big old mess why people didn't like
Well,
it.
I don't
But
think Bucky would have fit. Bucky's still brainwashed. Bucky
right,
isn't a good enough character to be Captain America, even as much as I love Bucky Barnes, and that was, I
yeah,
thought, was the only two competing. So I thought that maybe people didn't want that. That's because they would want Bucky, but Bucky doesn't make sense as Captain America, like
right,
at all. He's
yeah,
not. He's
and
not good enough to be Captain America. Where Anthony Mackie, War Machine, he is.
right. And my thing is like, I don't think that they're doing that. I don't think they're gonna do that, because a lot of people have seen, just from what happened in the comic books, like, oh, they're gonna make him Captain America and hand
Mm.
off and have all this. I'm like, I really don't think they're gonna do that, because looking at what we've got in this series so far, just the two trailers we've gotten, it looks like he's coming into his own even more than what he has already in the movies, and he's been pretty prominent in a couple of the movies.
I mean,
And
I don't see why he would be other than War Machine. I mean, I don't mind if he was Captain America, but he's already a really cool character of his own, you
right,
know,
yeah,
that
and
was
that's
made for him. So, I mean, I guess I wouldn't care either way. I just don't see why you would drop War Machine for Captain
right.
America.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is too, is like it does seem like he's coming in more to his own, and like it seems like he's actually going in and looking at kind of the history of what happened with like the Captain Americas, because we even see where they're basically appointing a new one with John Walker. So I think it's very interesting, and I kind of feel like the whole Sam Wilson Captain America thing, like happened in the comics, I almost feel like we're not even going to get that because this show looks like he's really coming into more of his own, and then that whole kind of buddy cop kind of feel that we see going on there with Bucky also.
Yeah, I would like that better. I think Bucky and him are great together. So that would be best. But if somebody had to take the mantle, is the only reason I would be okay with it. If they're like, well, somebody has to be Captain America, you know,
Right.
I don't know who else he would choose. But I would like him to stay who he is. I love his whole winged outfit and his little buddy that flies with him, the little red drone.
Yeah, Red Wing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, definitely. And so then, what about? Because I'm hyped for that show. I'm overhyped for Falcon and Winter Soldier. What about Black Widow? It seems like this movie has been constantly delayed. What's your outlook on Black Widow?
I was beyond excited to see Black Widow. I mean, it was due to release 2 weeks after lockdown. I mean, we were right there. And so that's kind of, okay. So sore subject with this for me because I was so excited for the Black Widow movie. I never really dug Black Widow, but then I really, really fell in love with her as a character through Endgame, Civil War, and Infinity War. And I just fell in love with her, and her movie is great. And I understood them trying to hold it, but once everybody else, like I got to see Trolls World Tour already. Right. I got to see, I buy all the theatrical releases because there's nothing else going on. And you have all your fans who love you and pay for so much stuff. We have all been just in a miserable, crappy ass situation for a year now, over a year now. And you still haven't given us the money and taken the hit financially. I mean, the movie and taken the hit financially. Whatever, you tight asses. I mean, how fair is that? Show some love and appreciation for all the people that dump your jacked up prices and just dump money into everything because that's what they have to do to get your entertainment. Well, show some freaking respect for your fans and give us the stupid movie. Right now, it's getting to where it's like, I don't even want to give you my money anymore for it. Like, I don't. And I don't pirate anything, nothing ever. I pay for everything because I want to give them money to make more. So I can do that. So I do that. But I'm getting to the point where I'm like, dude, I don't even know if I want to give you guys the money for this movie because you've made us wait for so long. I think it is a really crappy move on their part. I think it shows a lack of respect for their fan base, their customers, and just shows their greedy little money-hungry money mongers who are taking over everything.
Right.
Anyway.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the honesty there. Because I honestly feel the same way. I love Black Widow. I'm so hyped for this movie. Love Scarlett Johansson, everything. Like, love it. Give me this movie. I'm so hyped. But at this point, I'm kind of like, you know what? Like, if this movie gets delayed for I'm at the point where I don't care if it gets released and theaters here in California aren't open. Please release it at the theater. Please. So then, however much longer you got for it to play at the theater, then you can release it on VOD for me to buy. I don't care if you do the thing where you wait so long and then you put it on Disney Plus and I have to pay the $30 for it still. Can you just do whatever you need to do to give it to me? That's what I want. I just want to see it.
You guys don't even know if theaters are ever going to be opened up again, and you're still holding it.
Right.
There's not even a guarantee that theaters will ever open up again. And if they do, it might be one per city that costs $100 to go see because it's a specialty thing now. But we don't know. So why are you still holding it?
And the thing is, I'm kind of like where you're at with it now, though, too. Is I'm kind of like, almost like I
don't even want to give you my money anymore. I spent already $44.50 on Trolls World Tour. I could have been spending that money on seeing seeing Black Widow more than once, because it only lasts for a day and it costs $20 or
Right.
$30. I would even pay that twice to see it.
Yeah.
And then buy it when it comes out. They're making a very poor decision.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Gray. Thank you for coming on the show. We've got to get together again sometime.
Anytime, Trinity. I enjoy it. Thank you for everybody who came to listen to me jabber about WandaVision.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here again. And thank you all so much for watching today. Again, it's nice to have Gray here on the channel. We'll hopefully look forward to bringing her here on the channel once again. But thank you all so much. If you guys have any other thoughts or anything, make sure that you leave those here in the comment section on this video. And we will see you all in the next video.
And I'll answer any for me. Bye, guys.
Later.